And I'm going to, without further ado, introduce both Tam and Angela from Kendal College, who are going to take us through in the next 55 minutes a presentation all about sticky learning techniques. We're going to follow the similar approach in terms of keep the conversation going, let's keep it interactive. I'm going to encourage you to keep putting your questions into chat, and don't forget about Menti. Okay, over to Tam and Angela.
Okay, thank you. Hi everyone.
Hi.
I think I have met quite a few of you before, which is lovely. It's lovely to see some familiar faces. So I manage quality at Kendal College, and my colleague Angela is one of our teaching and learning coaches. So we've adapted today a session that we have, well, a variation of what we've been doing with colleagues at our college over the last, 9 months or so, looking at how to make learning stick and how to really support our learners in that long-term learning, which they can then apply obviously to employment or to higher education or to other educational experiences. So we're going to share some ideas with you, but we also want you to share your ideas with us. We want to talk about how we have been able to adapt to a different way of teaching in the last few months, and what's difficult about that, and what the challenges are, and what we found to be successful. Okay, so I thought that we were going to be on first, so we don't need the introductions, and we don't need the housekeeping either. But what we do need to, I think, reiterate is that the lovely thing about today is that it's a really safe space to explore ideas. The collaborative and supportive nature of PD North, you can feel it as soon as we came in today. I think you can feel it, and experiencing that first session has certainly made me less nervous about our session. So please feel free to contribute. Okay, Angela.
Yeah, hi everybody. I just wanted to start the messages going and just start communicating. How prepared were you? So in the dawn of a new era of teaching and learning, how prepared were you for the change to online and digital tools? Did you have, as a department, blended learning functions? Did you have the platforms? Were they already set up? I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, we felt, didn't we, Angela, that our college was very varied in who was ready and who wasn't. And those that were more technologically advanced coped a lot better when we went online, and others have really struggled.
Yeah, so we got not very prepared at all. Not really. Some systems in place, but it was a shock. Yeah, so I think we're all in the same similar situations. Yeah,
I think some departments were quite well prepared. I think it was just a lucky coincidence, if I'm really honest. So we had some online platforms and some blended learning, and then other parts like the Teams bit, there wasn't a lot of time to do any training on that, so people have had to sort of go away and do it themselves.
Yeah, someone's mentioned also that they were using Google Classroom before as well. I'm surprised how well they were set up as well, so that's great.
Yeah, I think it was a very steep learning curve for many of us, and certainly for colleagues with students who were well, not that far off finishing really, but not near enough to be able to complete. And I think Kirsty's point there, it's certainly given us all a wonderful opportunity to upskill, is absolutely true. And actually there were, I would always have stepped back from using technologies and thought, oh, that's new, I'm not sure. And it's made me engage with lots and lots of things that I hadn't previously engaged with. And I think that's probably something that is familiar to a lot of people.
There's a few more comments that have come in saying that James adapted quickly, but relationships were set up with the learners, and that was vital to get that engagement, because obviously a number of people have struggled with keeping that motivation and engagement going. Sandra's talked about using conference calls, Zoom, Skypes, that's worked well for them. and there's been varied engagement with the technology from staff as well. So that's been something to really manage, is, you know, staff confidence in using that technology as well.
Yeah, we certainly had colleagues who were nervous of the technology, and so reverted immediately to phoning learners and emailing learners, which meant their 2-hour class that would have been a class once a week turned into sort of 48 hours of work, and that's been really really difficult. And I think we've been talking about the technology and saying this is also about minimizing workload. It's not about increasing it. Yeah. Okay.
If we go on to the...
Yeah, so this is an Ofsted reference to Ofsted, and I thought, how relevant was it to put a reference to Ofsted in? And I thought it is really relevant, and it is, we're talking about that Ofsted's remit hasn't changed. It's just that we're doing things differently. And actually, when we think about the sticky learning techniques, what the new EAF does, or not so new EAF does, is to really clearly state that learning is something that happens over a period of time. We're getting away from that idea that you walk into a classroom and you see learning happening. We're actually thinking about progress, and that actually knowing more and being able to do more is what's absolutely crucial for our learners. This idea of sticky learning, that learners have to make connections, that they have to be able to connect ideas. And we're thinking about all of those things, and all the pedagogy that we were using before, we're still thinking about that. We're just delivering in a different way, and teaching and learning in a different way. So that's our reference to Ofsted about how important it is that learning takes place and doesn't just disappear. So if I can use Sue's analogy, and those of you who know Sue Keenan might have heard this one already, it's a bit like candy floss. Sue, do you want to elaborate?
Oh, I love my candy floss metaphor is going around. Yeah, so basically, it's just basically, you think, my little metaphor is when learners come in, just imagine that they're like the stick of the candy floss, and they might have various levels of candy floss on them, various knowledge and experience, and our job as teachers is to help that candy floss, which is all the learning, to grow and grow and grow, and then by the time they finish the course, they're full of candy floss, and it doesn't fall off. It stays there, because if it did fall off, it'd be an ice lolly, and that wouldn't work. It wouldn't have been memorable learning. And so it's about kind of think about getting them in the machine, and that learning staying, and it's how we know it stayed.
So I love that. Get it onto Menti quickly.
Absolutely, it's brilliant.
That's brilliant. We've got to capture that. I love it.
And Sue was really kind, and we did some training together at the beginning of the year, and she said, you can use my ideas, and I've used the candy floss one right the way through the year, and everyone who hears it remembers it.
Yay! See, that's like training in action, isn't it? Sticky learning about sticky learning.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, so Angela's just some of these links to our professional standards.
Yeah, so we were just thinking about professional standards and how relevant some of these are at the moment. Being creative and innovative, excuse me, in selecting and adapting strategies to help learners to learn. So I think you'll agree that we're all looking and finding different ways to engage learners, re-engage learners, and find different teaching strategies to support. Also to apply theoretical understanding of effective practice in teaching, learning, assessment, and drawing on research and other evidence. So for me, I've been really focusing on assessment and trying to find other ways to ensure my learners are engaged and have knowledge and understanding. And then also to contribute to organisational development and quality improvement through collaboration with others. And this now, obviously our collaboration, but also across all colleges, we're working together as teams like we never have before, to ensure best practice for our learners and staff. Yeah. Did anybody want to comment on that?
Okay, so we'd like you all to find your pens and paper that Chloe reminded you would need at the beginning, and just go back to just a quick mind mapping activity and reflection about what you know on this topic, and bringing to mind all the things that you've read, all the things that you understand about making learning stick and about what works, maybe about retrieval practice or long-term learning for life. So if we could just have 5 minutes, if Poonam can time that, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
We're back at 11:21. I'll set the timer now. My kids really don't like me doing this.
Okay, that feels like a long time. I think is that enough?
They've had about a minute and a half so far, Tam. It does feel like a long time, doesn't it?
It does feel like a long time.
Okay, just another minute or so. We can come back. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking that as I set the timer. This feels like a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to come back and start sharing? Everyone's ready for that?
Yeah. So if anyone would like to comment verbally, or if you want to put things in the chat, just perhaps a main focus.
So we've got visual simulation provided.
Doing something, music.
Yeah.
Little and often.
Flashcards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Help learners to see links between
Words.
things and make connections.
Sorry, Kirsty, that was really quiet. Could you?
Oh, sorry. Turn this up a bit. Yeah, sorry. I said help learners to see the links and make connections between different things.
Absolutely. Can you think of an example of how you do that?
I've got one that's going to sound really awful, but my learners struggled with a question that said, what are the effects of solitary confinement on prisoners, about a text that they were reading? And I was seeing lots of weird wrong answers. And I realised that they weren't actually taking long enough to understand what the word effects means. And it's lots of construction students, and lots of them I knew were sort of smokers of various things. And I said, what are the effects of, or new people who were, I said, what are the effects of smoking cannabis? And got them to start thinking about the use of the word effects, because they could all tell me what the effects were of smoking cannabis. So I said, right, so that's what we mean by effects. now let's look at this question again. In this text, what are the effects of solitary confinement on these prisoners? What's it doing to their mental, what's it doing to them? And then they picked out like the mental health problems that were talked about in the article. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, and I realised I didn't.
No, it was the first one that came into my head and thought, should I? But it worked well, because it did then stop them writing things that were nothing to do with the effects. So
Yes.
Brilliant. And we've had a few more comments come in on chat as well. The constant sort of retrieval, the contextualization, sequencing, know your learners, the power of relationships, understand their places of work and their job. So that really personalized approach, the sensory memory, working memory to long-term memory. And there's also
application is obviously, the absolute key, isn't it? The relevance and the application. Yeah. Okay, so what we've done there is created a starting point, and it's obviously something that we can use, and it's something that can work in the digital platform as well. That we don't always have to feed back. We can ask learners to do things. You might ask them to take a photograph of their mind map and post it so that you can see where they're up to. We need to create starting points for all of our topics online. And mind maps, reflections are a good way to do this. Obviously, we could also think about using assessment for learning techniques and assessment for learning technologies such as Kahoot, Socrative, TED-Ed, Mentimeter, ClickView. So lots and lots of ideas of how we could start off to find those starting points with our learners, and also get them into the space and get them to think, as we have, about what we're actually thinking about today. What is this session about? Where does my mind need to be? And somebody, I can't remember who it was, made a really good point earlier about the importance of sending information to students prior to meeting them. And whether that's on a weekly basis or whether that's learners that you haven't met before, that actually when we come into this space, we need to have a good idea of what we're going to be talking about and what we need to have thought about. And flipped learning really does come into its own on this platform. Okay, so obviously a few of you in the chat have mentioned forgetting and then retrieving information, which is obviously the key to retrieval practice, that if we are allowed to forget something and then we have to recall it, those patterns in our brain become stronger, and we remember, and much more likely to remember it. The more times that we've been able to forget it and then recall it, it actually makes that learning deeper and stronger. Getting that information out is really important, and I think certainly myself as a practitioner, I was always keen to do a recap of what we did last week in our session, but I wouldn't have recapped on what we talked about last month, and I wouldn't have always capitalized on that connecting of ideas from different topics, different units. Certainly as a new teacher, I absolutely focused on my one little bit that I had to teach the learners, and didn't make those connections for learners or help them to find those connections. So I think that it's obviously a very, very powerful tool to improve learning. Okay, I wasn't sure whether to leave this slide in or not, actually. When we met a few months back and we were talking about the importance of a change, so that learners having to recall information and apply it over a much longer time frame, we talked about the fact that qualifications have changed. So in the apprenticeship world, the move to standards has led to EPA. People are not being ticked off when a competency is observed. They're actually having to develop knowledge, skills and behaviours over a much longer period, and then they're assessed by exam or professional discussion or whatever that actually looks like. So this approach to teaching and a much more long-term view is absolutely crucial, and it permeates through all of these different types of qualification. And I assume most of you have moved to RQF. We clung on to QCF with our BTECs, but this year we're moving wholeheartedly. And obviously it's different. We have external assessment now, so it's preparing learners to be able to recall and apply information for over a much longer period of time than just producing an assessment. Okay, so over to Angela now.
Yeah. Hi, just wanted to try and get some ideas together. And the question we had originally was, how do we currently promote long-term learning? So we've reworked that a little bit to make it relevant to now. Which retrieval techniques did you already use, and how have you adapted them to a distance learning platform? So we did say 5 minutes. Tam, do we think just a couple 2 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd rather spend the time thinking, but it's something that everyone has been thinking about, I think, over the last 25 minutes. So I'd like to spend longer sharing ideas.
Yes. So, well, a couple of minutes just to think. So what are you already using, and how have you really adapted them to a distance learning platform? So just give you a couple of minutes to think, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So I'll give you 1 more minute.
We've got some great comments coming in now in the chat.
Yeah. So someone mentioned about thinking time as well. So it is really useful, isn't it, just to have that little bit of time just to think. We've got use of professional discussions, definitely. We need to learn to be happy with silence.
I realised that straight away. That's really uncomfortable when I gave people time to do an activity. But how important is that? Judith mentioned in the last session the intensity of some of these Teams meetings and this way of delivering. And actually you need quiet time, you need thinking time, planning time, writing time. So we need to, it's a good point.
Is anybody happy to open up and have a little chat?
Laura, you talked about the brain dump, something that Joanne Miles has developed, the mind maps. Do you want to just share your experience of that with us, please?
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I'll just turn the video on.
Thanks,
so
Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Hi. Sorry, I've had my video off because I've got a little 4-year-old joining in as well.
Yes, I know, the challenges.
So one of the sessions that I attended was with Joanne Miles, and one of she looked at lots of different techniques. One of them was the brain dump, which is essentially everything that you can remember about a topic. So it's like a recap activity and getting it out on a page. And again, I think some of you mentioned about silence and time, and it's really important not to, you need to give time, and the more time you give, I think what happens is initially everybody puts everything that they can initially remember, but then actually then you need to give time for your brain to work harder to start really retrieving those other elements that are in the long-term memory, which then obviously strengthens the long-term memory. So sometimes you've got to stop yourself from suddenly start talking over people and just really giving them that. But I've done that both online, where I've just said, you know, whilst I'm teaching online, get a paper and a pen and just do your brain dump. And then I've done some Q&A after to look at what's been there. I've also done it in the chat, so, you know, type everything in the chat that you can remember. And then the good thing about it is you can revisit it at the end, you can revisit it throughout, and they can add to it in different colours and so on. And then with the mind maps, I've used, again, good old-fashioned pen and paper and people holding it up to the camera and different things. But in Teams, I think it's called MindMeister, which is one of the applications that you can use really easily within Teams. And that's a collaborative mind map that everyone can add to. And I've used that a few times and that works really well.
Laura, can I ask you to expand on that a little bit? It's quite interesting. Where is that on the Teams?
Yeah, so when you're on your Teams page, you can, at the top, you can add different functions. So there's different tools that you can embed within it. And I by no means am a Teams expert, and like everybody, I kind of ended up using it really quickly and a very little experience. So so from that, trust me when I say it is easy to use, because I've managed it. And what was great, I mean, what I've been teaching online is a brand new teacher ed course. So it's been really bizarre actually that it's a brand new group of learners. We've all met online, and also I'm teaching them how to teach online, but these people will also eventually teach in the classroom, so I'm having to kind of bear both sides in mind. But it's been great when they've done their micro teachers recently, also online, they've been using some of the tools that I've demonstrated whilst teaching them, so it's great to see that kind of wheel close there, really. But yeah, the MindMeister is it's a good one.
Yeah, someone's just popped that there's an interactive mind map on Zooms as well.
Or is there?
Oh, sorry.
There's not, but I've just popped in there that there's other things that you could do. You could use Padlet with connectors or something like MindMeister. So you'd have to go outside of it, outside of Zoom. There is an interactive whiteboard. From my experience the past month or so, it's become a little bit laggy. And I don't know if that's just because Zoom has massive usage going on at the moment, so I've not really used it, but when I used to be able to use it and it was fine, it was actually really good because anyone can do it. So you can set it up so that any participants could highlight things, point to things, do tick and cross, things like that. So it is really useful when it works.
Okay.
Excellent. Kirsty, you've been talking about lots of questioning and quizzing. Do you want to just elaborate on that and share your experience with us, please?
Yeah, sure. So what I mean there really is just obviously using our knowledge that we all build up about the learners and what we've done with them in previous lessons, and really helping them to see the links and the overlaps. And I think you get a real light bulb moment from them when you do that and support them effectively to do that. So one example might kind of make it a bit clearer what I mean is I used for showing them persuasive techniques. I'm an English teacher, by the way. For showing them persuasive techniques, we looked at a letter from the actor Lenny James, who they were all quite familiar with, kind of discouraging young people from carrying knives, well, or anybody really, but you could see it was kind of targeting young people. And we'd looked at how he tried to build a relationship with the listener or the reader and kind of connect with them and help them to relate to him and him to them. So then when I showed them a few weeks later a letter that Amazon Prime had sent to me trying to persuade me to rejoin and not cancel my membership, we looked at similarities there. I said, where have we, how are they trying to connect with me here? How are they trying to build a relationship? Or more like I said, what's happening in this first paragraph here and where have we seen this before? You know, those kind of questions to help them to remember and like pull their memories forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, And it's about contextualizing it for that learner as well, isn't it?
Exactly.
And it all connects to that sticky learning.
Yeah.
Anybody else like to share any ideas and things that have worked for them?
Yeah, I think.
Hi, Elaine.
Hi. Sorry, I've just been listening and trying, not wanting to jump in. But
Yeah.
I was talking a lot about adult learners because I work in the adult community, and I'm an adult and I'm still trying to learn and trying to remember things. It gets harder as you get older. But what I've noticed is that for me personally, and I've noticed it in other adults as well, is if you give them something to think about straight away without anything beforehand, it's really hard to get your mind thinking and to get those answers out. So I think giving them the information beforehand and letting you think about it and move it, because I know I do my best thinking when I'm walking the dog, when I'm away from what I'm supposed to be thinking of, or when I'm swimming, when I used to be able to go swimming, or when I'm just like putting the kettle on or something, an idea will just pop into my head relating to what, you know, someone's supposed to be thinking of. So I think so doing things in the moment sometimes doesn't help, and we need that time and space to be able to sort of collect our thoughts and think. And there's been a lot of research about that. I listened to a podcast on it recently, and they were saying you do a lot of your best thinking when you're away from what you need to think about, which I think definitely right for me and a lot of our adult learners. So setting it up before they actually happen to come into the class, whether it's a virtual class or a real classroom, so they've got that thinking time, and maybe and Padlet's great to just put those ideas somewhere where everybody can see, you know, before the lesson.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Helen, you mentioned about apps, podcasts, videos with quizzes to check learning. Do you want to share your sort of experience with us a bit more? What's worked well?
Yeah, we try. What we're trying to do is the apps that we might use or might have used in a face-to-face classroom session, try and embed them in, so like things like Quizlet and Quizzes and Menti and Kahoot, try and put those in and use them as possibly like an introduction to sessions and things. So there's an element of familiarity about the session that they're doing, but also doing the retrieval things as well. So we're using those and then thinking about how the students feed back to us as well, maybe getting them to do, if they're confident, obviously it just depends. We don't want them to be loaded with loads of written work, because obviously if everybody gives them written tasks, then so thinking about how we justify the feedback and maybe using podcasts and videos for them, you know, to try and make things a bit more fun and engaging, so they want to stay on these online sessions and they don't just cop out kind of thing. So we're hoping to try and just familiarise what we do in a classroom session, but bring in the new things like the podcasts and videos so that they can interact a bit more with us.
Fab, brilliant. Tam, I'm all right just to pick up on one more. We're all right for time? Okay, so Sandra, I want to know about your warm-ups that you talked about, this sort of looking at the physical side of things. Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Well, some people remember things because of the way they physically move. I mean, I do. If somebody says to me, listen and don't move, I just can't do it, because I have to actually move. And a lot of learners are like that as well. Sometimes they might be rocking backwards and forwards. Sometimes they might be fiddling with a pen or whatever. So sometimes I find it helpful just to get the students to relax. I've got them standing on one leg for a while sometimes. Because it makes them relax and it makes them concentrate. And then I try and get them to remember something. The one leg actually really worked, much to my surprise. I just thought, they seem a bit restless. I'll stand on one leg and get them to do that. And I thought, oh, well, that works. But you could do that on the computer. I mean, when you got us to do mind maps here like this, I thought that's such a brilliant idea, because I'm actually physically doing something. I'm not just talking to a screen. And I saw a warm-up exercise once, which was really good, which involved chucking toilet rolls. Pretending you're throwing a toilet roll on Zoom, right? So you're passing a toilet roll, like I'm passing a toilet roll to Kirsty, right? And then Kirsty has a toilet roll in her hand and she's grabbing it from me. So you've all got toilet rolls in your hands and it looks like on screen it's passing from person to person. And that works not just because you're making the connection between one person and another person and saying, right, here's my toilet roll, I'm passing it to Kirsty, but it also works because what you're doing is you've got something soft and you're physically moving it. I'm a very physical person. I need that physicality, but I think a lot of our students are as well. They love that. Oh, there's lots
Fabulous. That's great. Thank you. James, I've just spotted you use different sports balls. Do you want to share that with us and what you do and how that works for you?
Well, there's two different things. There's like the online thing or the classroom thing. Which we were thinking about?
Online, I think.
Online, yeah. So a lot. I've got sports students, so a lot of them have got little bits and bobs at home anyway. So we're doing similar thing to what Sandra's do. Pass it between each other, or also just hold it while we're doing retrieval stuff, and just we can play with the sticks and the balls or whatever else really while they're trying to retrieve information. A lot of what Sandra was saying really.
Yeah, have you found the students, they fed back, and if they fed back to you on how they find the session, so has it improved the retainment of information, or?
But from a teacher point of view, yes, but they're not all that keen because they don't like, obviously, to show themselves up in front of each other, so they're not that keen, so it took a little bit of prodding to get the thing going. Yeah,
but do you think once they've done it a few times, think that will change? Or?
Yeah, we haven't done it enough yet for that to, maybe at the start of next year we'll be able to develop that a bit further, yeah.
Thanks, James.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you okay to move on, Angela?
Yeah, yep. I was just going to ask, there's some brilliant ideas coming through, and is there any way that we can keep all these ideas together somewhere?
I've actually asked all of our co-pilots to save every chat, and I'm going to put all of different ideas and stuff like that onto the Wakelet. So the Wakelet we're currently using as an agenda over the next week. That agenda will have all the different tweets that are going on and links and chat and all those kind of bits and bobs.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chloe.
Lovely. Thank you, Chloe. Okay, so we just wanted to make some links really between Rosenshine's principles of instruction and with the sticky learning concepts that we've been talking about, and draw out, we've already got loads of examples of how you're doing this, but draw out some quite more specific examples of how we're able to follow these online, in online delivery. So I saw something, I think it was on Twitter the other day, and it was like, well, Rosenshine's principles are not new. And no, they're not new. And but Tom Sherrington says, but they have stood the test of time, and they are equally as applicable to online learning, digital learning, remote learning as they are to classroom learning. And it's just about that interpretation and how we can follow these principles. So Angela, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm just looking at ones that I've used online over the last few months, and one that comes to mind for me is independent practice. So obviously we're getting students to actually do independent study and research as well. And I'm finding that I'm actually getting more information from the learner, and their evidence of additional reading as well. So they're showing that research and development skill where I didn't necessarily have that before, which I find has been really successful. other things as well, thinking about sort of daily reviews, check-ins online. We have teams, so be working with them, but I think more than ever, it's been very important for the learner to know where they're at, what stage they're at of the programme, what they need to do. And I think in that way, working online, it's been very successful that way. That students have been able to track their progress online as well. In there. Thinking about checking understanding, this was one that I was thinking about quite a lot when I was teaching online, and different methods of assessment. So questioning, as we spoke about in the previous session, is a good method of assessment. But what I found that has worked quite well is working with activities and just a quick screenshot, or making sure they're putting comments in as well, completing mind maps, tube lines, just little simple activities that takes them away from the screen for a few minutes, and then they can also upload them really quickly with a screenshot. Yeah. Did I go on, Tam?
I was just thinking about in terms of the checking understanding and the asking questions, we've had lots of good suggestions in the chat about using things like Kahoot and TED-Ed, ClickView. I don't know if any other colleges have got ClickView. Is that something that you have? It's like Netflix for education. Oh, that's how they bill it. And we subscribe to it at Kendal, and it allows you to take any published or broadcast material, any videos, and make them interactive, edit them and make them interactive. So in terms of the sort of the pre-thinking and the understanding as an activity to do before the session, and then coming along with that, or an activity to do after the session, we find those very, very useful.
No, sorry. Oh, someone's just said the ClickView. One good thing about ClickView as well I've found is that you can see who's actually interacting with ClickView as well. So if you are doing it as more of flipped learning, you've obviously got an idea of who's engaging prior to the session as well.
Because we often flipped learning for me, it always fell down in practice with the few students who didn't engage with it, and I always used to become unstuck at what I was going to do with them when you've planned a whole lesson based on this prior learning. But with the ClickView application, yes, you can see exactly who's watched the video, who's answered the questions. You can see if they've skipped the video as well, which is quite interesting. So yeah, it is very, very good. And Lynn Naylor asks if it's paid for. It is paid for. Yeah. And we had trouble initially in getting people to engage with it. But we're persevering, because we think, particularly if we're going to be delivering more of our curriculum online, it's a really, really vital tool. It might be, it's impressive in terms of the wealth of resources for each department that you can use.
Yeah. I think everybody's at different stages with it across the college, aren't they, as well? So some people are just using it at the moment for video resources, and other people are developing the resources and creating lessons and uploading them onto Teams as well, which you can do.
That's right. So you can make your own video. So for example, if you're in beauty therapy and you want to video a technique and talk through it, and you can then upload that video, send the link to your students, who can then all comment, try it out, etc. So yeah, you make your own content as well. Also, students can make their own content, and then that can be shared. So it's really useful. Okay. Has anybody, we've talked a lot about asking questions. I think Judith, there's some really good debate with Judith and Kirsty's session about the asking questions online, and about what that looks like and what the barriers are. Presenting material, new material in small steps. That's incredibly important in the classroom, but I think it's even more important online. One of our practitioners said the other day that the online learning should be more like a bottle of port, not a load of bottles of wine, that it needs to be distilled into the absolute gems, the things that the essence of what you want to talk about, so that sessions are shorter and richer, and provide lots of extra things to do after the session, but they're not just long.
Yeah, because I think the tendency would to be put a PowerPoint with lots and lots of information on that PowerPoint with a voiceover, but how much information will that student retain from that PowerPoint? So yeah, it's a good analogy, Tam.
And how do you revisit it, and how do you cut it down into chunks? And I think it was Lou Mycroft who did a video to help presenters in this session, and she was talking about the sort of the real sparkly bits, and that really you should try to minimize any presentations down into 6 slides. We haven't quite managed that, but if you can't manage that, you should be asking why you can't manage that, and whether you need shorter sessions more often. Okay.
Brilliant. Sue, you've made an interesting comment there about decluttering learning.
Yeah, I just think sometimes, like, we try to do all bells and whistles, don't we? And we're so busy doing fancy animations or whizzy PowerPoints that you've actually lost the essence. And I think it's about thinking about, right, what's my learning outcome? What do I want them to learn at the end of this? And making sure that we kind of get rid of some of the fluff and nonsense and, you know, engaging, exciting, whizzy bits, and just really focusing on the nuggets. So I think it's, you know, we love a metaphor, candy floss port. I always think it's a bit like panning for gold as well. You've got your pan and it's full of sludge, and you just want to kind of actually get the little nuggets that you want them to take away at the end and get rid of all the sludge.
Yeah. Another great metaphor, Sue, thank you.
I'm just full of nonsense, aren't I?
Wonderful stuff.
Okay. So, Angela, is there anything else that you want to follow up on that slide? I'm conscious we've got about 8 minutes left.
Yeah, no, I think we've got some really good comments, and we've got them to keep as well, so which is brilliant. So yeah, we can go through them all and expand as well.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we were thinking about how all of this, these approaches, looking at learning in more long term, making sure that we consolidate learning, how that actually looks in practice and what we could do. We've really encouraged our practitioners to think about a curriculum design that is has features that are spiral. And for all of you that are new to teacher, you know, have done teacher ed in the last 20, 30 years, we'll think about that spiral curriculum where we are revisiting things periodically to allow that forgetting and then the retrieval practice techniques. Been thinking about the planning of our courses to allow for much more connection of ideas rather than individual units almost or modules being run in isolation. Much more crossover for our learners to try and build that bigger picture. We've been thinking obviously about our learning environments, and that's the things that we were talking about long online sessions or short, you know, keeping it short and snappy, and how to embed those retrieval techniques into online learning, whether we're using Zoom or Teams. Somebody mentioned actually the dual coding in the chat, and it was really early on. I don't know who it was, but if you haven't looked at Oliver, and I find his surname really hard to pronounce, if you haven't looked at Oliver's work on dual coding, if you just Google him and have a look and look at those images, absolutely fabulous stuff in terms of providing the message to students visually, as well as doing it in another way as well. So it really can aid understanding, and I think it fits very well on a digital platform. We've looked a bit at Rosenshine. We've thought about Tom Sherrington and his book, if you haven't got it. And I'm not on commission, but if you haven't got it, I'll put the details into the chat. It's really, really good. And the site, many of you probably know about this, but I only found it a couple of weeks ago. Love to Teach, research and resources for every classroom, with loads of good resources in there and lots of wider reading and discussions. So I'm yet to fully explore that, but it looks really interesting. And we also thought about how we've been delivering CPD and how we've been encouraging CPD in this current situation. So we're just at the end of our first admin week, which is traditionally a training week, going into our second on Monday. And we've been putting on CPD sessions all week. And this year, very much what we've done is asked colleagues to present on things that they are feeling really confident with now. So we've had sharing of best practice in digital learning, and lots of professional discussion groups, and really moved away from, we decided that briefing training with information, you know, your safeguarding, your prevent, etc., we're going to leave until August. We actually wanted this to be just a very positive celebration of teaching and learning and the successes, and it seems to have gone down very well. So it's something that...
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Tam. The feedback from lecturers and staff is that they found it very beneficial and really relevant to their needs right now as well. And I think because it's sharing best practice as well, I think it's a really positive way of doing CPD.
I think it's come across as being really honest as well, because the staff that have used it and have had experience of it have said what's really good about it, but they've also said what's really annoying about it as well. So there's that layer of being honest about what we're using. So it sort of means more than somebody being completely honest and positive about something, but not actually saying, but this really, really annoys me as well about it. So, you know, working out how to get over the bits that aren't so good as a team, rather than, so it's the honesty for me that's been really good, that's come from your colleagues that are using the same platforms as what you've been trying to use.
I think it helped that people could choose what they wanted to go on. They weren't mandated to go on it. So I think that's helped as well to be more meaningful.
Yeah.
So my voice.
Yeah, thank you, Judith.
We've got just a couple of minutes left now. Tam and Angela, was there any sort of final points?
Yeah, no, I think it's been absolutely fantastic to hear your thoughts. And like Angela said, I think once we collate that, Chloe's going to collate what's in the chat. We'll see that there's lots and lots of things that are familiar that we've heard of, but lots of things that we haven't. So new ideas, new things to explore. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for everybody's contribution as well. I think that was some really good ideas. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic, perfect timing, absolutely wonderful, inspirational presentation from all of you this morning. I've certainly learned a lot. There's a number of things that I'm going to be looking at myself, and I hope that you will have the opportunity to reflect on this and implement some of the strategies and hints and tips that everyone's shared in your own practice. So before we break for lunch, just remind everybody, we'll be back in the main room at 12:30. So we'll leave this, go back into the wait clerk, back into the main room. And I would like for us all to unmute, and I think a big clap to all of our workshop facilitators this morning. Massive thank you, ladies. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Well done. Okay.